So when you're driving a high mileage car, does that affect the oil that you use, the frequency with which you do oil changes? This video just analyzes the things to consider when choosing an engine oil if you have an engine that has done a higher mileage. And it does vary slightly from person to person depending on your driving style. So like all of us, as engines get older, they experience more wear and tear. The clearances inside the engine have become wider. Things have started to wear and degrade. And in general, the engine is not operating as it was when it first came out of the factory. So does that have a bearing on which oil you should use? What exactly is a high mileage oil? What are the differences between that and a standard oil? And should you change grade of oil as your car ages? If you were going to ask someone about the correct oil for your car and they didn't ask you the mileage, the age, and the model of your car, you should really ignore their advice because they're all things that are typically important when it comes to considering oil. But also you need to look at your driving style. Are you doing lots of short journeys? Do you do lots of long journeys? Is the car having a particularly hard life? Has the car experienced a lot of wear and tear, or have you maintained it fastidiously and the engine is much closer to those original factory specs? So what is a high mileage car? For some people, you ask them, they might say 75,000 miles. A lot of modern cars are very well engineered and we often see mileages of 200,000 upwards. So in those cases, you'd say 200,000 miles. But the reality is a car is as old as the wear and tear that it's experienced. You might have a 70-year-old human that has been doing marathons their whole life and they're as fit as anything. So their body and their general health is going to be much better than, say, a 40-year-old that has smoked, drunk excessive amounts of alcohol and had a really bad diet their whole life. So just looking at the age of an engine is not enough. Even looking at the mileage of the engine, that's not enough. You need to look at the overall condition of the engine. So the factors that you're thinking about in terms of the oil is how much wear and tear has the engine experienced. So as engines get older, the oil seals inside the engine will start to degrade. So a lot of these high mileage oils primarily address those seals. They help to rejuvenate or recondition those seals to just keep them effective so they're not leaking. Just switching to a high mileage oil will not fix a few problems, like if you're experiencing piston or cylinder slap, if you're already getting significant power loss from your engine, and for engines that experience a lot of blow-by, a lot of the combustion gases flowing past the piston rings and the oil control ring into the oil itself. But using the correct grade of oil and switching to a high mileage oil early enough can actually prevent those problems from forming. So it's interesting when you start talking to owners of old cars. For example, talking to someone with an old Toyota truck, the 10W30 specification of oil that was recommended from new. And some of these owners have seen their car's mileage creeping up to the 500,000 mark. So they're certainly not impacted by sticking with that original manufacturer's specification. But in most cases, using an oil that is formulated to condition the seals that have started to wear on those older engines is certainly a prudent move to make, particularly if your mileage has started creeping up to the 100,000 mile mark. So some oil additives will go some way to addressing this problem. So you might stick with the manufacturer's originally recommended oil specification, but you may use an additive. But be very careful on additives. There's a lot of snake oils out there. So you really want a very specific additive that is designed to rejuvenate primarily the seals inside the engine and also to enhance the lubrication properties of the engine oil when your engine has already experienced a considerable amount of wear and tear over its lifespan. So when you start talking to people with these ridiculously high mileage cars, you find that they've generally changed the oil every 3,000 to 5,000 miles. So for most people though, 8,000 miles is a recommendation and that's what they stick to. Some people are more conservative than that and others are much more blasé about oil changes and don't see the importance of it. I think we've all had the uncle that has given us advice about a car, and I particularly remember one quote that stuck with me. I don't know how true it is, so if you know your stuff about oils, please let me know. But he was always saying that you should stick with the same grade the manufacturer recommended, but you should change the frequency and reduce that frequency as the car ages. And it makes sense when you start thinking about oil dilution and the way the oil degrades on these older engines, where more of the fuel and more moisture is appearing in the oil, further degrading it. So it certainly helps to keep the engine oil in the condition that the manufacturer intended and provide the lubrication that you need. So in some cases where the engine is burning oil, you're topping it up fairly frequently. So that can go some way to minimizing the oil dilution. The overall oil has reduced and you've topped it up. I've got another video dealing with top ups, because top ups are not the same as an oil change, but they will certainly bridge the gap between not changing the oil and having the regular oil changes. So if you are topping up regularly, that may well go some way to preserving the quality and the lubrication properties that's required from that specific oil that you're using. As the clearances increase inside the engine as it wears, there is certainly an argument for changing the grade of the oil. You may find that a thinner oil tends to burn more in an older engine. So if you're experiencing a burning of engine oil and your compression test is showing that things are still fairly okay in the engine, but you're just dealing with a little bit of extra wear and tear, it might be time to think about changing the grade of oil. But it would be impossible for me to specifically give you a rule of thumb to follow, because engines are so different. The advice you'd give to someone with a small capacity turbo engine would be completely different to someone who had a large capacity V8 engine. So if you're interested or you've got specific needs or requirements, drop a comment and I'll do my best to get an answer to your question and help you to find the correct grade and quality of oil for your specific car. But please, if you do that, let me know what region you're in, because the oil availability in different regions is very, very different. I'm here in the UK, so my experience is primarily based with UK oils and UK suppliers. But thankfully, through our forum, I've got contacts all over the world, so I should be able to find an answer to your question. So please boot the like button if you found this video useful. I've lined this video up for you that you should find really interesting. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do so, because we'd love you to stay tuned. Thanks for watching. See you in this next video.